This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com. This show is brought to you by IndyWrestling.us. Check out IWC, RWA, and more. And listeners like you, support this show at patreon.com/Wrestling Mayhem Show.
I'm hungry as fuck, but I ain't starving yet. Chain for the pain, cocktail bar set. Never said I was a gangster or thug, but I'm an animal. Feeding for the taste of the floor.
Hey guys, it is the Indy Mayhem Show. I'm Mike Sorg at Sorgatron on the Twitter here in the Sorgatron Media Studios in Pittsburgh, PA. And we are fulfilling that promise, continuing with regular editions of the show, talking with a lot of people that have been on our list for a while now, actually. We're catching up on that. We've been on this hibernation with all the COVID and everything. And finally, we're getting up to steam. We're getting tired of not talking to people, and we're getting around to things. But of course, please go check out everything at IndyWrestling.us and WrestlingMayhemShow.com. Wrestling Mayhem Shows, we'll find all the great wrestling podcasts where we talk about not just indie wrestling, but of course, a lot of other stuff like WWE, Thunderdomes apparently, and AEW, and just having fun with the fans and wrestlers that join us on there. And of course, at IndyWrestling.us, you can find a lot of the stuff that we talk about here on these shows, and a lot of the people that we talk with on these shows are featured over there on VOD, DVD, and of course over at IndyWrestling.network. And one of the things that just recently became featured over there on the network itself and has been featured on social media for the last several weeks is a project that's been a lot of fun to be involved with over the last several months called Fight Underground. And finally, I got to digitally tackle the mastermind behind Fight Underground, Quinn Magnum, joining us here on the line. How you doing, Quinn?
I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself? I see you finally mastered your tackling skills.
Yes,
that's pretty elusive for a little while. I feel like Barry Sanders.
Well, you're a big guy. You're a big guy. It's hard. You're hard to take down. So, but of course, I do want to talk about Fight Underground and everything that's going on there. But I think a lot of people, and I talk about this a lot. Like I know parts of indie wrestling, and like I love hearing about before like 2006 and Pittsburgh wrestling and everything. Quinn, you're one of those guys that I don't know much about. When I started working with you nearly 2 years ago now. 3 years ago now? Is that my math right? Something like that? 2018-ish? Late 2018-ish? But 2 years ago. But holy crap, it feels like it was a lot longer. But, and I think a lot of people out there don't know much about that. Of course, yourself, we'll get into former NWA North American champion, about that people have heard about as well. But let's go back to the beginning. Like Quinn, what was kind of your first exposure, your first memory of pro wrestling?
Pro wrestling. Honestly, I didn't actually start watching until I was probably, I'd say, 10, 11 years old. So I wasn't like a young kid watching or anything like that. I do remember my grandfather used to watch it all the time. NWA is what he would have on. And I grew up a Catholic. So what that meant was catechism on a Saturday. That's what it was back then. It was on a Saturday. So what would happen was my grandfather lived like 2 blocks from the actual church that we went to for the catechism, right? So as soon as it was over, I would go down to my grandfather's. Well, I catch him a couple times watching wrestling, and I'd be like, what's this stuff? This looks pretty cool. And one of my first memories is Ricky Steamboat hitting the ring in the old NWA. It's probably, what was this, 84 maybe, something like that.
Wow.
And clearing the ring and everything else, and I'm kind of hooked. So then every time after that, I would actually run out of the church and down to my grandfather's house to catch as much professional wrestling as I could. And from there, I just was hooked. That's when we first started getting cable out my way, because I lived out in the country. So we needed cable like 1985, but then at that point, it was like I was watching WWF, I was watching NWA. I was, World Class Championship Wrestling was big back then. AWA, anything I can get, watch. That was pretty much it. And any information I got, I thought was like inside information, came from the magazines, which we all know is a work. So,
so you had for the mid '80s, like you were kind of blessed with like a high exposure and accessibility to watching. It sounds like.
Oh yeah. I honestly, and this is weird, I can't remember what I did 20 minutes ago, but I can remember my wrestling schedule from 35 years ago. Let's see. NWA was on at 8. like 8 to 9. It was like their 1 hour show or whatever. It was on TV.
Mhm.
It's on TBS. I think it was on TBS. WWF would come on from 10 to 11. And then NWA would come on Fox. It wasn't Fox then. It was WPGH or whatever
Mhm.
from 11 to 12. And then 12 to 1 was like WWF Challenge or whatever. Then you had to wait till like 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock was World Class Championship Wrestling. And occasionally you pick up NWA around the 4:30, 5 o'clock. So you're switching back and forth. Then you had 6:05, which was NWA. So that was my
Jeez.
Saturdays.
Jeez, I thought my Monday nights watching Raw was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, eventually after a couple of years, you kind of down. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, I don't really need to watch the 8:05 one because
Yeah.
kind of recap on 6, so on and so forth. And World Class kind of went off, and then for a little while, I think they did have USWA. I might have been on ESPN in the late
Mhm.
80s, something like that. But yeah, I tried to catch as much as I possibly could. I never actually attended an indie event ever in my life until I actually went to train.
Wow.
And I only ever went to one wrestling event in my entire life leading up to that training, and that was because I won a local radio contest to go to the Civic Arena to watch the NWA. This is right when Dusty Rhodes just got reinstated after being the Midnight Rider. That's how long ago that was.
Which I think maybe a more recent kind of analogy to that, I guess if people remember the Mr. America Hulk Hogan angle in WWF, like maybe 15 years ago, like it was basically the Midnight Rider that Dusty did, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing. And Dusty actually did Midnight Rider twice because he did it in Florida. And he took it from 1970s when they did it down in Mid-South and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all recycled. You know
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's awesome. So going from that, like, so you have a mostly televised experience. Like, how did you, at what point were you like, I want to do this? Yeah, I want to get in the ring for this.
That's a good question. I really started hitting, like, lifting weights and stuff like that probably my junior year in high school, sophomore year, somewhere in the sophomore, beginning of junior year.
Mhm.
So I started getting a lot bigger. Believe it, I wasn't very big like my sophomore year in high school. And for me, it was, at that point after I graduated high school, I was like, okay, well, I'm either going to be a pro wrestler or I'm going to go and try my hand at pro football. So I actually had a tryout set up for what was back then the World Football League Baltimore Stallions. I actually talked to the Steelers. I forget who the guy's name was that was like the director, player personnel or whatever back then. And he sent me down to there because he said, we don't do the tryouts anymore because, Chuck Noll there used to you'd be able to do maybe occasional walk-ons or whatever. Bill Cowher had just taken over a year or two. Prior to, and this is how old I am, but Bill Cowher had just recently taken over. So they said they don't really do that anymore, but they had the World Football League. They were going to send me down. I actually had a tryout set up for the Baltimore Stallions.
Wow.
And at the same time, I'd heard Bubba, believe it or not, from B94 back in the day.
Bubba the Bulldog, right?
Yeah, yes. And he was talking about, wrestling, and then he's talking about getting into wrestling. I'm like, well, I didn't even know that even existed around here. I mean, that's how naive I was to everything. So I was like, what the hell? I'll try to give him a call on the radio station. So I would do that occasionally, maybe once a week or whatever for a couple months and nothing. So finally my trial's starting to come up and I was like, I'll try, again. And this time I get through. And Bubba answers the phone, it doesn't answer, but he gets on the phone or whatever because I had said about, I want to talk about wrestling to Bubba or whatever. So I guess a break come on, he gets on the phone or whatever. And he starts asking me questions. He's like, okay, well, how tall are you? I said, 6'5". And he goes, all right. He goes, how much you weigh? I said, about 255. And he goes, are you bullshitting me? I said, no. Why would I be bullshitting you? He goes, and he's like, I don't. He goes, are you sure? He goes, you're not bullshitting me with this, 6'5", 255. He goes, how much do you bench? I said, well, I don't really max out anymore. I just do, according to his NFL scouting combine, how much I can bench press 225. At the time, I was doing maybe 24, 25 times. Yeah. I was actually in shape, but so that's he didn't believe me. It took him like, he's like, I'll call you back. And he calls me back and he's asking me the same questions. You're not bullshitting me? I'm like, no. I didn't realize that, being a wrestler and working people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So finally he's like, okay, I'll get you in touch with our trainers. I said, okay, well, who are they? He said, Paul Atlas and Brian Anthony. Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know who the hell either one of them were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, because of like what I just said earlier about the wrestling magazines, I thought Brian Anthony was Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony from down south. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, how the hell did this guy come from down in Tennessee all the way up to here to train? You know, no clue what I was walking into or anything like that. But that's pretty much how I got into it, because it's just the fact that I loved wrestling, I loved football, and quite frankly, school. Let's just say I found other things that were very good at getting me out of school.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, they'll stick with that.
So you go from that, and again, not knowing the underpinnings of how wrestling works, even at the indie level. So you walk in, you got Paul Atlas and Brian Anthony, which were the wrong crowd collectively, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we have plenty of stories on that if you want to go listen to the Paul Atlas episode. And I think he has more stories to tell me, so we have to get him back on again. But so what was your first impression going from what you're reading and seeing in NWA, and then walking into that training facility that first day?
Actually, it was a Wednesday that they used to meet once a month on a Wednesday, and like all the wrestlers would come and do the meeting for the Wednesday. And they go over the card or whatever, you know, the upcoming card and who's on it, and you do tryout, you know, the practice matches, and you know, it's a way to get everybody there to, you know, and evaluate their progress and so on and so forth. So it was actually a Wednesday that I went there. So I walked in and there was already a bunch of guys there. The first person I met, gentleman Joe Perry. You know, he came up, he shook my hand, he made me feel really very welcome. You know, and I was like, okay, well, this dude's pretty cool. And he's talking to me, you know, and cracking some jokes and feeling a little bit comfortable and stuff, you know. And then I met like Crusher Hansen, who then was Bone Crusher, and Mad Mike, who wasn't Mad Mike quite then. He might have been Jester. Sorry, Mike. He might still been doing the King's Jester gimmick, but at that point. But, you know, and, you know, I met Brian and I met Paul and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, and there's a wrestling ring, you know, so I'm ready for this. You know, I didn't know what it entailed, what the tryout was going to entail. They just kind of wanted to see if I was going to show up, I think.
Yeah.
And then see, you know, my interaction. Am I going to be, you know, whatever, as far as am I an asshole, you know, because I don't know how many kids I've seen walk in and be assholes and cocky, and, you know, or am I introverted or, you know, whatever. So, you know, and then I got to meet a lot of different guys, and most of them were pretty cool. You know, I don't really recall anybody being an asshole, as opposed to maybe just, you know, saying, oh, there's a new guy and just stayed away from me, which I don't blame them. I'm not a big people person anymore either. So, but, you know, and I mean, my first thoughts was, okay, I'm ready to do this. And I felt like, okay, I'm bigger than most of these guys. So, okay, yeah, I might have a shot at this. I don't know. So I didn't do the football after that. So, needless to say, I guess I must have liked it.
Did you, you know, obviously, you know, different kinds of physicality, but how did your training for football kind of prepare you for this?
It helped out a lot. I was never a guy that was built like a Lex Luger or even like a Brian Anthony or, you know, like a Jimmy Vegas locally or whatever, guys that were all ripped up. The closest I ever got to a six-pack was maybe a two-pack. You know, the top two, that was it, you know. But I mean, I was in shape, you know, and cardio was a big thing. You know, I was like running a mile, you know, my 40-yard was under 5 flat. So, which was pretty good for a country boy that, you know, was basically just training himself back then, you know. I was into the lifting, so I was doing a lot. I was able to leg press 1,000 pounds at one point. I squatted over 600 at one point. And I don't know why. That's probably what's wrong with my knees now, you know. So it was just basically, I felt like I was in decent shape. I actually cut down to from I was like 270. I cut down to like probably between 250 and 255. So I was a lot leaner, you know. And guys like Crusher and them were like, oh, he was skinny. Well, no, actually, I was a little more in shape than what you were, buddy.
Awesome. So going from that, like, how long did it take you to get in the ring for your first match?
Okay, so that's an interesting scenario there. That was I walked in right as a group had left PWX. That group included Vince Kaplak, Sean Evans, The Beast, Run the Beast Williams, and several others. Like, there's a big group that had exited. So the roster was kind of, you know, obviously missing a lot of personnel.
And this is the late 90s?
This was 96.
Okay.
I believe it. Yeah, probably mid 96. So I was kind of fast tracked. I had only trained for maybe 3 or 4 months before I actually did my first match. And I can tell you right now, I was not ready. Not at all. Because I mean, I did my first match, I did another match, and then I was out for a couple months, and then I did another one like in December, a couple in January. And honestly, it probably wasn't until March or April of '97 before I actually felt like I even should have been in a ring. At that point, it's finally started to click a little bit. Okay, this is what you got to do. And at that point, I still wasn't any good, but at least at that point, I felt like, okay, I understand what I need to do, and I can actually go out there and do something. But it helped that back then, Crusher and Mike and myself and, a lot of other guys, it was a common thing to go up there and train inside the ring for, several hours on end, 4 or 5 days a week. And a lot of people will say, oh, okay, that's just them saying that. Now, that's actually the truth, because we actually, that's what we did, back then. It wasn't, going up once a week or once a month and then wrestling a couple of matches and then some shit dog promotions or whatever. It was, you went in there and you worked against each other. Other people would come in there. You'd want to jump at the opportunity to work against them, to work against different styles, different sizes, so on and so forth. And honestly, that's, I think, was the biggest thing. It wasn't as much getting in the ring in front of a live crowd as it was behind the scenes, kind of working out, 4 or 5 days a week, several hours on end. That's what I need. That's what everybody, to be good at anything, in my opinion, especially in sports or anything really, you need to be able to have repetition and practice. And if you're able to do that, that's how you get better. You're able to evaluate yourself and say, okay, here's what I can do, here's what I cannot do, so, and stuff like that. So
yeah, I remember, myself, high school sports, and I think probably when everybody's looking at wrestling training, they need to look at how many times did you train for basketball, how many times a week did you train for football, the strength training and everything along with that, right? Like if your professional wrestling training doesn't reflect that, you're not going to get better.
No, absolutely. And I'm a firm believer, and I tell my son and daughter this. My son plays, he actually just joined the high school baseball team and is playing fall ball now, which is pretty cool. My daughter's been playing softball, for several years on a very good team. And that's what I tell them, how you practice is how you're going to play.
Yeah.
So if you don't practice, guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to play, So, and if you practice half-assed, you're going to play half-assed.
Right.
And that's just something that it was instilled in me by my parents, and it was instilled in them by their parents. And it's just something that was just kind of passed down, I guess. So, I teach my kids now.
Yeah. So, you say you had a pretty long storied career here, but I know one point that keeps popping up, and I think you're even sharing a PWI article a few weeks ago as well. There was a stint where you were involved with the national, the same company, more or less, that you grew up watching, the NWA. Can you tell us a little bit about that involvement?
Yeah. PWX actually joined the NWA, became NWA East. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know. It's probably 98, somewhere around there. And NWA was trying to, the NWA pretty much died off in the early 90s.
Right.
And then they're trying to make some sort of comeback, some sort of relevance, so on and so forth. And so at the time, I was actually clicking pretty good as a wrestler. I was one of the guys that was, doing pretty well. For myself, and there's a lot of others that was doing the same, but it really got involved with the NWA at that point, and eventually, became a North American champion and stuff. Probably the highlight of that for me, it was a mark out moment in which actually there's two of them. Looking back at my whatever career you want to call it, but one of the highlight moments was I was ranked above both, I believe it was Kerry Von Erich and Barry Windham.
Really?
Two guys I grew up watching.
Wow.
I was like number 4 in the NWA in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, which again we established as in Mark magazine. But I was like number 4, and Barry Windham was right below me at 5, and I think it might have been Kevin Von Erich at that point. I think Kerry was dead. It might have been Kevin. It was one of the Von Erichs that was like below that at like 8 or something like that. And then the other time was when the NWA championship was vacated, and I was North American champion. I was the number 1 guy. There was that they said champion. Vacated or whatever, and number 1 was me. So that was kind of cool. And you had like AJ Styles and shit like that below me. I was like, yeah, okay, you see where they're at and where I'm at.
I was looking at a little bit of the title, just to see what the era was looking like, and it looks like you were involved in, I think it was the 35th anniversary event for the NWA.
Let's see. I was actually involved in 2 different ones back then. It might have been something like that. There was one in Florida. There's one in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two that I actually was able to do something in. There's a couple that I went before that didn't, just went to be part of the convention.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the match was dog shit. I can tell you that. It was horrible. The guy I wrestled was fucking terrible. Yeah, it got to the point he wanted to end the match. He's like, I do this handspring, off the ropes or handspring thing, kind of like what I think Sabu used to do that.
Okay.
And he wanted to do that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. This doesn't sound right to me. And then, like an idiot, I went with it, and he went to do it, and he like crumbled into the ground, and then he comes back and like half hits me. And this is probably one of my biggest regrets in professional wrestling ever. I sold it.
Oh.
Took the bump off of it, and at that point, before I even hit the ground taking the bump, I'm like, motherfucker, fuck this. So I literally got up and boom, I remember taking his head off, and I yelled to the crowd, "You want to see me send this motherfucker through the mat?" I'm like, "Go home." He goes, no. I was like, fucking, we're going home. Fuck this. So the match was like 4.5 minutes long. It was fucking terrible.
So unfortunately, NWA just kind of still did reflect Indy in those days.
No, that was it. And on that same show was AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels, who tore the house down.
Oh yeah.
But the thing was these stupid. Can I even say this? But these guys that were in charge of actually putting together the convention puts out 20 freaking matches, like 6-hour time. By the time you get to the main event, which was a tremendous main event, half three-quarters of the crowd's gone. The rest of them, their energy is completely gone.
Yeah,
it's like just showcase the best you got. Do a two, and they actually wised up a few years later. I believe they did a 2-day event where they showcased indie talent, and then they actually had talent that was kind of the upper echelon of talent come in and actually do the main show.
I would say,
and that's what they should have done.
In that era, like AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels were probably like, probably Ring of Honor popular at the time, right? So
I would say so. It was NWA Wildside was kind of like what Ring of Honor, what I mean? The level of Ring of Honor right around then. So, they're two of the hottest names on the indie circuit, and rightfully so.
Absolutely. So from this, you transitioned to creative. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came down?
Yeah, I found it really hard to wrestle a match and do do creative at the same time. As far as like getting into the creative, let's just call it a shoot. I'm married into the family. You know what I mean? So I was given an extra opportunity that probably wouldn't have been presented to someone else.
Yeah.
And I got my foot in the door, but I felt like, what was weird is a lot of, even back then, a lot of guys were like, oh, you just married into the family. Well, that's correct. But what it did was it made it 3 times harder for me to gain respect. It made it 3 times harder for anybody that want to listen to it. You know what I mean? Because they're like, well, fuck, you're Triple H.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so honestly, I felt like I had to work hard. It made me better at it. It made me better as a wrestler, I think, as a person, and as somebody's doing creative. I had to earn these guys' respect, twice, 2 times over, twice as much as I think anybody else. And the hardest one to do it with, the 2 hardest were Paul Atlas and T. Ranchula. But then again, you're talking about 2 guys that those are the guys that I set out to earn my respect. Earn their respect. The most was because I knew they'd be the 2 hardest to earn. One of the most gratifying to earn respect was probably Sean Patrick, because he's just all around great dude. And the thing is you earn Sean Patrick's respect, then the guy will take the shirt off his back for you. So that was one of the most gratifying. But the 2 I set out for were T. Ranchula and Paul Atlas to earn the respect. And once I got on that side, with them, to where the jokes, I was in on the joke, you know what I mean, or the hazing or whatever, then that was like, okay, well, now I know I've achieved it, if that even makes any goddamn sense.
So you're given that opportunity, and I know, like, talking with you, it seems like you don't want to be on screen, you don't want to be presented like we're like it's a marvel we got you here today. So was that kind of like a separation from that, to not be that guy that's putting yourself like over on the card kind of thing, or just kind of just changing your attitude towards the creative?
It was probably a little bit of both. being on the creative side, I never really felt like, you know, I never really felt like that I should have showcased myself, but at the same time, I felt like that I still had, enough ability to be able to be showcased, if that makes sense. And it just got to the point that for me, it was like, well, if I just remove myself from the scenario, then I'm not putting myself over as a champion, which I can proudly say I never put myself over as a heavyweight champion as a booker. And that's a rarity. So,
Yep.
Tag team champion, here that, yes, that's fine, whatever. But
That's I'm currently reading Jericho's first book, and it's like, and I went to this promotion and I met this guy, and of course he was the champion.
Imagine,
like
that was a common occurrence back then.
Oh yeah.
And I want to say it's almost even more common occurrence nowadays. I feel like, and that was the thing. Is like, to me, it never felt right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're in charge of saying who is winning, who is losing, who's going to be the champion. You know what I mean? Why would you? I don't know. And I understand the argument of I can trust myself the most.
Yeah.
I'm the most consistent. You know what I mean? I know I'm not going to screw myself over.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'll argue that point because I know I've known myself to screw myself over several times. So, but, at that point, it just got hard to really wrestle a match, and do the creative and be able to, maintain and watch everything that was going on and be able to react accordingly, because there's a lot of shit that happens that you need to react right there and then, make a snap decision. And if I'm going over a match in the back and I'm for myself and I'm not able to make that decision, well, that affects the show. That affects other wrestlers. That, it affects fans, affects a lot more people than, just myself. So it just became easier to just kind of phase myself out, and if needed, I would, I kind of made myself kind of like a territory kind of guy, an old territory kind of guy where I'll disappear for long periods of time. And all of a sudden when I show up, well, guess what? Okay, well, that's kind of cool. Stick around for a couple of shows and disappear again, you know? And that was, it worked, but that was the thing was, and I'm big time firm believer now. I don't want, as far as this Fight Underground, I'm sure we'll get to that, but as far as Fight Underground now, I have no desire whatsoever to be any part of anything. I reluctantly am doing this with you, to be honest with you. It's not about me. It's about other, showcasing the young talent that's coming up through. It's about having the guys that helped pave the way years ago to actually go on and entertain still, be able to entertain and give their legitimate opinions, legitimate debates. And that's kind of what we're hitting for, and I may throw them a curveball here or there and not tell them something when we're live and see what their real reaction is going to be, and you're smiling because, it's but the thing is, that's, I don't know. It just, it makes for a better, more realistic creation, and I've always been big on that. Growing up with the NWA was a lot more reality based than what the WWF product was back then. And I was a much bigger NWA fan because my grandfather is what, got me watching wrestling, and that's what he watched.
So let's talk about this. So you were, of course, booking at PWX. It is, since I've obviously separated from the NWA for a while. And then, I mean, I know, I've always tried to keep an eye on, especially over the last several years, of what's going on in the area. And all of a sudden, this like Fight Society idea keeps popping up. At the beginning of 2018, I believe. And I think I went to the second show ever, and it was a different presentation. What was that? Why, what was the transition there? What was the idea between the transition there?
It was try to create something different. To try to create, again, something that's a little more realistic based. The idea of Fight Society, there's parts of it that was rolling around in my head for a couple of years. I felt like where PWX was at that point, I didn't feel like we can compete with some of the other bigger org, the IWCs and the RWAs. They were, let's just go ahead and shoot with it. They were kicking the shit out of us on a consistent basis, not just, hey, they outdrew us or, whatever. They had, more views on something or whatever, this time, but we got them a couple of times later. It was a consistent trouncing for years. And it just got to the point, it was like, okay, well, by continuing to do the same thing over and over it's just this definition of crazy to me.
Mhm.
Expecting a different result by doing the same thing over and over, it just isn't going to work. So let's try something that's out there. Let's try something. We got nothing to lose. When you're at the bottom and you're looking up, there's nowhere to go but up. Unless you just want to continue to tread water down at the bottom with the rest of the scum. And I don't want to do that. So I was like, oh, let's try this idea. The part of town that we're in, it might not have been the greatest, but I mean, that can be said anywhere, really. I mean, if you think about it. But, so I was trying to go with more of a, I hate to say it because the WWE just did, but like an underground kind of Fight Club scenario without being a Fight Club, though, if that makes sense. I want to incorporate more sports into it while still kind of giving this mystique of, maybe these guys ain't supposed to be doing, this ain't legal kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it was a trial and error. There were some things that we tried, and, that just didn't work. There's some things that took away from, workers' abilities to be able to tell a good story within a match,
Mhm.
or even to keep a match sports oriented, and that was a trial and error. And that's what I'm hoping with the Fight Underground thing. We're kind of corrected some of the mistakes, and hopefully it's trying to present in a whole different way than what anybody else has really been seeing. And I mean, I'll be honest. All I'm doing is basically taking NFL pregame and NFL postgame on each bookend and putting the match in the middle.
Mhm. Well,
so
just to illustrate, like some of the things that you were doing different, like the things that I noticed, and coming into that first show I attended under the new moniker, like of course there was a more hardcore vibe. The weapons were like right there on stage, or actually the entrance, I think originally, when the fans came in, which I'm like, I don't know if this is safe, which I guess was part of the maybe this isn't right kind of thing that you were trying to vibe you're getting across. But there were
let me stop you there real quick because I will forget my train of thought. There was supposed to be what's supposed to be security guards, like bouncers, that were supposed to be seated right there to make sure nobody touches anything.
Mhm.
Well, I was teaching at the time, and neither of the students that were supposed to be sitting down there watching decided to pop their asses down there where they're supposed to be. So screw them.
So you got that. You had these like kind of pre-event fights break out in the crowd amongst the wrestlers that were like on Facebook Live. You had this ranking system. There was people that were members of the Fight Society and not members, and trying to get in and getting ousted when they lost. And there was a ranking system. Like there was a lot happening during those shows.
Yeah, it was too much at once.
It was, and I think I gave a little bit of like my comments and impressions of that afterwards, but it was just like, wow, this is like, it's a lot happening, but it's like this does stick out.
Yeah, and I mean I think that was the biggest mistake. Instead of easing, one thing in at a time, that's one of my probably biggest drawbacks is I'm a very impatient person. So like even to this day, Christmas is like, come on, yeah, I'm kidding, but so yeah, what we did was we threw when we did a change, we did a complete change rather than just kind of emphasizing one thing over a course of several shows and then easing into the next thing and easing into the next thing.
Yeah,
I should have told a better story from the overall organizational standpoint as opposed to just throwing 30 things out there at once and saying, okay, catch up. Well, that was stupid.
So we go through this process, and of course I started joining you and worked with you for well over a year with Fight Society, and it was a heck of an experience. But obviously circumstances changed, and after 2 years of Fight Society, that ended, and then this Fight Underground concept started coming together. You mentioned a little bit before, but tell us a little bit about that inception, that transition. I mean, it really is. I mean, obviously, it's kind of a 2.0 of this concept, learning from those first 2 years of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This was, I mean, it just came to be time to be done with where I was. I felt like, I 23 years in the same place, and I felt like it was just time to be done. And quite honestly, I gave serious thought to just being done completely, and actually was going to be done completely all the way up until probably the end of January this year. So it was probably 2 full months, and then I kind of was like, I don't want to go out like that, So yeah, then the studying started. For me, it was like go back to the basics. Go back to literally studying tape, listening to podcasts, and I understand that isn't the main thing of how to book or anything like that. Because somebody comes up to me and says, "Well, I watch this many hours of wrestling, I can book." No, you can't. But you can go back and you can learn if you know what you're looking for. And I knew the concept that what we had. I felt like the concept was there. I felt like there were some good things that was involved with it. There was other things that needed to be changed so that kind of be able to tell better. Again, I use the term stories, but you know what I mean. Be able to tell better stories with it, make things make a little more sense, make things a little more reality based. And I don't think that we necessarily needed hardcore with that. So get rid of weapons. Make the weapons. We're in a point now where the weapons. You need to make the weapons actually mean something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a bar fight and somebody takes a steel chair and clobbers you over the skull, chances are you're going to go down and stay down. So that's the concept. They're reality based,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to 17 chair shots and you keep getting back up. My God, what are you going to need? A shotgun? But yeah. But for me, it was kind of just going back and relearning the art of professional wrestling. And I spent probably a good 4 or 5 months just doing that, just studying anything from all the way back to the 1940s, all the way up to even today,
Mm-hmm.
and with a specific focus on knowing what I was looking for, what I wanted to do, and not only just in wrestling, but even like this sounds stupid as hell, but like movies.
Yeah.
You can actually get a wrestling story out of a movie. You get the wrestling story out of a freaking TV program, if you think about it. You know what I mean? So just kind of studying just different movies and mannerisms and how the story is told in a movie. Classic movies, new movies, blockbusters, whatever. Just not watch them to be entertained as opposed to watch them to how they're presented. And then also sports. The NFL, I just told you a little bit. The NFL is probably the best at it. Basketball does it, hockey does it, even baseball does it. But where they have the pregame kind of thing, they pregame show stuff. Then they actually have the presentation of the actual sporting event, and then afterwards they recap what's going on. So it kind of clicked to me. I was like, man, that's kind of what I wanted to do. That's what I kind of wanted to do a couple of years ago. But it's like now with you on board, we have the capability of actually doing it and doing it well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So quite honestly, you being on board is what really reinvigorated me, to be honest with you, because now I knew that I had, I can put a vision out there. I had a good group of guys, core group of guys that is involved with this that, I wouldn't trade in for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I knew I had the core group, and then with you on board and Missy on board and stuff, now all of a sudden we're attacking every facet of what we need to attack to make this work. And, while we haven't actually had a live match yet, we haven't sold a ticket yet. The thing is I feel like that we all should be patting ourselves on the back that over the course, when did we do this? When was the first one? The end of June? Did we show the first one?
Yeah.
The actual match?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, from there until today, we're just under 100,000 views of just our matches. Now think about that for a second. That's only 10 total matches. That's one card, basically, one wrestling card.
Yeah.
So any wrestling organization that can put on one card and get 100,000 views on it, I would say is a success.
Yeah.
So I can quit now. I'm done. I'm retired.
if we don't have area 2, so this has been in a little bit of the concept there, but I guess we can say like there was going to be a live show. Obviously, there was going to be a lot of live shows for a lot of people.
Yes. Right.
We can say, and I don't know if you want to kind of speak to that and kind of the transition, because I know what we did with Fight Underground, like a version of it was going to happen before the first live show. So this was not a full change for COVID, but it was kind of a lucky plan that was already in place.
Yeah. If ever there was a wrestling organization that benefited from COVID, it was us. You're right. I mean, it's horrible to say.
Yeah.
But I mean, that actually, you're absolutely right, because I mean, you're involved with the whole conversations going back and forth. The idea of what's being presented out there now was always in the plans dating all the way back to
January.
Yeah. It was somewhere around there, right whenever it was like, okay, well, here's kind of the basic idea that I
Yeah,
have, and
yeah.
then that's whenever I really kind of got into the study of, everything. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was there. It was kind of more of a way to like present something as like almost like an infomercial to get people into the doors of
Yeah.
a live event. But yeah, we had a live event scheduled for beginning of May, wasn't that? That was
It
right?
was
Right?
late May, and then we found out
Okay.
somebody else announced before we did, and then we were going to kick it to June, and then everything fell apart in March.
Yeah.
So it kind of like before we could solidify anything even for that. From what I remember of the planning, and then I think the idea was we were going to have like this whole envelope invitation, like idea was going to be, how you got on, you as a wrestler got onto the first actual show, like, and
Yes.
we've been like
Yep.
kind of these filmed in a secret location kind of ideas, and that was going to permeate throughout. Like I think we're going to do like these matches with string in between all the live shows. We didn't have to do a monthly like kind of idea, and then that was a very kind of online focused concept.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's an untapped. I still think it's an untapped thing as far as online.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you advertise for a live event, should you only advertise on Facebook? Hell no.
Mm-mm.
You should be advertising a hell of a lot more than that. But at the same time, a lot of people don't take advantage of the opportunity that's sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like whether it be Facebook or Twitter or whatever, YouTube, whatever, to be able to present, you can go out there and do anything you want. You can present anything you want. And honestly, it's kind of what we did. We didn't even put on a match until the end of June. We did the fight council meeting. We were just sitting there talking,
Mm-hmm.
but it was kind of a hype. And, and the thing and I can tell you right now, I've been tracking the numbers, and I'm not going to inflate them and say that we got 13 million people watching on Roku or something like that. But, but we were getting consistent like 700 to 1,000 views,
Mm-hmm.
just on the fight council stuff.
Yeah.
Like every Wednesday night. And I mean, and the fact that a weekly thing and our views are still staying consistently within that range for the most part. There was one time that I got lazy. It was in the middle of whenever I was moving, so that I forgot to completely put it out there and stuff. And I think we only had like 500, but that's my fault. But I mean, still, even 500 isn't that bad.
Yeah, yeah. For just throwing it out in the world, like that's not bad.
Yeah, and then the Brandon's thing with the Inside Out, showcasing more of the wrestlers aspect of it. They're consistently 800 to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So and we're going that every 2 weeks with that. Is that right? Every 2 weeks,
something like that. Yeah, we got to work on our schedule with SummerSlam being this weekend, but yeah, that's happening. So
yeah, we gotta go around that. You already said about doing around that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We're talking. Don't worry about it. We'll be taken care of by the time people see this. I'm sure there'll be something scheduled. But anyway, so tell me more about the Fight Council, or tell the people more about the Fight Council, because I know there's always announcements. I mean, this is a thing we've started, the going underground idea. And actually, let's talk about that going into the formation of the Fight Council and the panels that you've been doing, because there was. And again, this was a brainstorm thing of hey, let's do people are going underground. What is this? Getting some faces out there and creating a little bit of buzz. And then that all started turning into the so-and-so's part of the Fight Council, the Honorable Fight Council. Talk about that inception and then what the Fight Council is, what it is, and why is there so GD many people on that thing?
Yeah, see, that's the common question. So the going underground thing, I actually approached you that one night whenever I come up to your studio. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got this idea.
You came up for a meeting. You came up for a meeting and started playing video games for the next 2 hours. So
yeah, exactly. But I came in, I was like, man, I got this idea. I don't know if it's going to look any good or whatever. And then I told you it, and it took about 20 minutes or whatever to kind of wrap your brain around it. And you're like, okay, let's go try this out. And then you did it and you showed it to me. I was like, yes, that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of an idea of up close and personal. Hey, this person just went underground. Well, what the hell is underground?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want. I wanted people asking the question, what is underground? Because now, when the next one comes out, what is this? And it actually worked, because next thing you know, I personally had people, I know other people, others that had said they had people say, well, what's this underground thing? How can I get in? How can I join? Well, that's just it. We don't want you to join. You got to be asked.
Yeah.
Because human nature is what? you know, the second that it's given to you, okay, well, I got it now,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're continuing to want it and want to chase it, you know, and being told no, oh man, you can't do that. That's exactly what we did.
There was a moment where I was filming a couple of the underground videos at another wrestling show, and somebody like kind of came around the corner and was just like, "Are you doing what I think you're doing?" and had to have a conversation like, "What is this? What's happening? What's going on?" Like, you know, I got cornered on it, you know, from somebody who's actually actually it was the ref that's now part of the underground. So
No,
you know,
he's a prominently featured part of the underground.
Yeah, he was not. He actually never even got an underground video. So.
No, he didn't, did he?
No, he didn't.
That's
no,
crazy.
He didn't. He just showed up with an invite the one time, or shortly before we started going with some stuff. So,
sorry, Rev, we'll get you one.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But as far as the fight council, that was kind of a scenario to where, kind of just again the whole press sitting. You know, if the president's talking, they have the press sitting there.
Yeah.
You know, kind of questioning that kind of thing. You kind of the same thing with the what's it called, the sports stuff, the NFL stuff.
Well, yeah, your panel on your pre-show is a lot of times Bill Caller, we mentioned earlier in the show, is a part of that panel talking about the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I kind of was thinking, it's like, man, you do that and just kind of get a couple people involved, you know, and after I got like a positive response from the first few, like Brandon and Chris Taylor, you know, and so on and so forth, Boomer Payne, Dylan Dean. From there, it was kind of like, okay, you know what? This is kind of a who's who of what was in Pittsburgh wrestling, you know, and kind of helped pave the way. So then I started thinking, you know, at least in my head was like, okay, well, you know what? This could be a way to kind of recognize the people that paved the way. And that's why you have so many people on here, because there is so many people that paved the way in years past, you know, and they contributed in a positive manner to professional wrestling in this tri-state area, you know, in one way, shape, or form, you know, whether it be behind the scenes, in the ring, connecting with fans, you know, maybe the work they did with even a specific fan or whatever. But every single one of them that is on this council is someone that deserves to basically be in what, for lack of a better term, is a local Hall of Fame. So, you know, and these are guys that, you know, definitely should be recognized for the efforts that they have given over the years. You know, they've given to the sport of professional wrestling. And yes, I'm calling it a goddamn sport, but they've given to the sport of professional wrestling. And I feel like, you know, I'm finally in a position that I personally can give back a little bit, you know what I mean? And as well as, like, you know, Paul Atlas, I talked to Paul about it, I talked to you guys about it, and everybody felt like it was, you know, a cool thing to do, a good thing to do. So it was kind of a way to kind of give back. And also, it does not hurt to have this much experience, you know, to help kind of guide the younger wrestlers, kind of oversee some of them, can fine tune some of them, you know, in some cases. And it definitely doesn't hurt to have people that have the gift of gab, like a Dylan Dean or Justin Idol, you know, to go on there and talk a mile a minute, because quite frankly, that's not what I am good at. So let them go out there and talk their little bullshit, because they're good at that. But I mean, that was the thing. And, like, you know, so the question is, why is there so many? Yeah. Well, I mean, why do we have to limit it, to be honest with you? You know, each one has a say. Each one has a say. I mean, you've seen the message saying, who do you think's number one? Who should be ranked number one? And they voted it. Each person has the opportunity to vote. Yeah, this is a legitimate vote.
This is legit, and there is, you know, and everybody, they're not just showing up on Thursday nights for the council or the tapings or anything. Like, these guys are involved. These guys are in a group chat conversing about things and how people are doing and how people are presented and who to watch out for, and also creating opportunities. Like, I know, you know, and we still have to get the commentary going, but AJ in Loss Prevention went down to North Carolina for a show, thanks to Boomer Payne, you know. So this is like a bigger, you know, it's like a Hall of Fame, but we do more than just get a ring and remember the good old days. You guys are actually active, it seems, with the project.
Right. Rather than seeing a picture on a wall and saying, hey, remember those days. Yeah. It's more of a, hey, these guys are still around and can contribute. And, you know, why not get them to contribute?
Yeah.
And every single one of them, all fucking 40 of them that's going to be on there. I think they're in the 30s now, but every single one of them has contributed within that group in some way, shape, or form. Every single one of them has contributed to Fight Underground. Every single one of them contributed to the sport of professional wrestling, past and present, and hopefully continued into the future.
Awesome. So we have all this going on. That first batch of matches is out there. Like I said, we got another one hanging out that'll be debuted in the next hopefully few days here as we get everything together with it. Where do you see, especially with COVID concerns, like kind of the best case scenario, like where do you see this kind of going, building? What kind of perspectives for the future of Fight Underground currently?
Get another taping, first and foremost.
First step. First step.
Yeah, first step. I mean, that's, I mean, you've seen it. A few others have seen it. There's 19 weeks worth of stuff that has already been 19 weeks worth of fights that has already been scheduled.
Yes.
Now, the thing is to be able to get everybody in one place at the one time and able to do it within the restrictions that COVID sets before us.
Yeah.
So that's coming, but so to get that next set, to crown a champion is going to be the eventual thing. You know what I mean? That's I think we're talking about these rankings and everything, and I know some haven't even debuted yet, while some have only done one fight and so on and so forth. But once we get this next set of fights out of the way and done and stuff like that, I think we're going to kind of start seeing who the cream of the crop is. And at that point, let's see, okay, this guy's undefeated, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, whoever is at the top, let's see what they do against the other top competition. You got some guys that's going in there against some young talent, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. Brohemoth is doing what he's supposed to do, and that's destroy somebody that is much smaller and much less experienced than him in under 60 seconds. And he's doing what he's supposed to do. You know what I mean? He did it in 30 seconds. So he's kicking the shit out of people, just like he said he was going to. So do we, and I have seen, and I watch every single one of the fight council meetings, stuff like that, and they did the debate with it, and I see both sides of the story. But at the same time, Brohemoth did exactly what he was supposed to do. Now, if somebody went in there and took Brohemoth 5-6 minutes when they weren't supposed to, then you start saying, okay, well, I'm not sure Brohemoth's up to the task. But Brohemoth went in there and he kicked the shit out of somebody. And then when Brandon come into the ring and said, bro, you got another one? And he said, hell yes. Stepped in the ring, no preparation, and kicked the shit out of that guy too. So he did what he was supposed to do. But at the same time, the Rev has, and I know I'm going way off on a tangent here with you, but off subject, but the Rev faced AJ Alexander, who previously, for an entire 18 months, a year to 18 months, was dominant at another place that he was at. So for the Rev to go against AJ, that's two top contenders going against each other. So, and JB Destiny actually made a good point at one point when he said, if you put the Rev against AJ Alexander in 10 fights, Rev's going to win 5, AJ's going to win 5. It just happened that Rev won the first one, and he's right. And that just goes to show the level of competition that they're going against each other. But at the same time, if like a Brohemoth or loss prevention goes in there and it takes them longer than what they should against somebody, well, then that's a problem. They need to start looking at what the issue is. But if they go in there and they destroy who they're supposed to destroy and look like a monster and act like a monster and come across as a monster, well, then they're a monster right now. And until proven otherwise, they're a goddamn monster. So that's my tangent on that. That's my opinion on that. But it's so to get the cream of the crop, we need to see who's going to separate themselves from everybody else. Is there somebody that can go 3-0? Is there somebody can go 4-0 or 2-0? Or do you have 2-0 against two really good competitors? At that point, that's where I want to see somebody's 4-0 against somebody's 3-0, competing for the first ever championship in Fight Underground. And obviously the intention is to get to live events. But when is that going to be? Some places like IWC, they got creative. They got very creative. They're like, okay, we'll go to a damn drive-in. We can have 250 people outside.
Yeah.
And you know what? It works. And there's other places. There's outside the state, down in Texas. I think Booker T did the same thing. At drive-in. I saw that. So what's happening is COVID in a way is making people become creative again within professional wrestling, which is a good thing. And by becoming creative, you're creating competition. With competition, you stay on your toes.
Yep.
And what benefits is good wrestling content.
It also kind of leveled the playing field too for like those that had like a lot going for them. If web presence wasn't strong, it kind of knocked them down a peg, right?
Yeah,
as
absolutely,
well.
yes.
So, and that's like where I think where Fight Underground was able to come out swinging with things. So, and you never know. Even like I was sitting here, I was supposed to go to West Virginia, and again, outdoor situation, it got canceled for circumstances beyond anybody's control. So it's still a big question mark. Even just saying, hey, let's do outside shows. So I mean, this is a big question mark. We literally do not know what this will look like a year from now. We don't. We honestly don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah. So, but if something you can control, like a production like this, seems to be a sound thing for a new promotion, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, it works out because we can use a little bit of downtime to maybe discuss and preview what's coming up.
Yep.
And we try to keep it simple. Area 1's complete. Why is it Area 1? Well, it's better than saying Season 1. Area 1's because we're in a specific area, and what we do is we go from place to place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the old carnies in a way, dating back to how professional wrestling started in the old carnies. Travel from town to town or place to place and just set up and go. And that's what we're doing. Area 1, that was our underground. That's our specific spot. And there ain't nobody knows where the hell we even were except for the people that were there.
Yeah.
Same thing with what Area 2 is going to be.
Yep.
Nobody knows where the hell. And the only way you're getting there is through that damn invitation, which again is legitimate.
I literally don't know where it is. Like
well, see, it's still it's such a secret. You don't even know where to go.
Yeah, we were like half a week from the almost scheduled Area 2, and I still didn't have an address. So this legit. I'm not bullshitting anybody. Like I literally didn't have it yet.
That doesn't reflect well on me.
I'm like, can I get a Google map on this thing to see what we're working with? I don't know.
The only thing you knew was on 14 acres of land. You're like, oh, cool.
Yeah. It's just like, all right, I guess we can do something with that, right? But I hope it don't rain. Hey, that's all right. That's all wrestling right now. At least you didn't have to refund anybody.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's the benefit of not having to sell a ticket right now.
yeah, exactly. But anyways, check out everything. Fight Underground, futhrowdown.com. I'm giving all your plugs for you, but I guess I know them.
Good.
And of course, the Fight Council is every Thursday on all the social medias that will carry video for FU Throwdown. The Fight Council is there every 2 weeks with Inside Out. And of course, all the matches are there. And if you're a part of the network, you can watch the entirety of Area 1 in one nice 2.5 hour package. You don't have to go search on the social media to find those and stuff. So, and of course, we'll have it on VODs shortly as well. For anybody that wants to actually kind of own that or DVD it or whatever the case may be, but yeah, so it's in the can, and a lot. Quinn, thank you so much for joining us. I know I'll never get you for another 3 years on this show, so I hope we made the most of it here.
No, I appreciate you having me on. Honestly, it was fun talking to you, and let me just say again, thank you very much for being a part of what we're doing as far as Fight Underground. Without you, there is no Fight Underground. So please don't go nowhere.
I can't go anywhere. We're on lockdown.
That's true. Good point.
Thank you so much. Again, check out everything over at IndyWrestling.us. This another great promotion. Still creating content or surfacing some stuff from the past as we have been in the last couple of weeks over there on .us and .network. So until next time, please support in whatever form it may be coming out these days. Support indie wrestling and the wrestlers behind it. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.